Hey guys, this is me Aviraldwivedi and you are listening on Extended Reality Developers of India community. Today we are going to have conversation with Wouter Delbaere and we're gonna dive deep into his work. He is doing the work of connecting big companies and demand side to the startups. So he's providing these solutions to a lot of companies, a lot of smaller groups, a lot of bigger groups, a lot of freelancers. So we're gonna know his perspective on this and we're gonna talk to him about his company, which is Magtas. Hi, Wouter. Welcome on the XR podcast. We are really excited to host you on the show and we're going to dive deep into your work. So, let the audience know about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. And where do I start? Do I start from the very beginning of my life?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and maybe we'll circle back to virtual reality and all that. So let me kick off with, look, I was born in Congo. Not a lot of people know this about me. So I started my life very internationally. So I have an African name called Noki, actually, very interestingly. So I grew up in about 7 countries, traveling with my family, including Philippines, where I spent 10 years of my life, where I went to high school and did my uni. And our company, which I'll get to in a sec, has a strong base in the Philippines, which is very important to our overall solutioning. I then did my master's in Belgium, where I'm originally from. Both my parents are from Belgium, but I only spent about 3 years of my life in Belgium total. And I did a master's in information technology, and I was always very passionate about analysis, design, architecture, and applying this to any type of domain. And this is, again, interesting to the business problems that we're solving for our clients today. I then started with a smaller company out of Belgium, and immediately an international career where I worked in about 6 other countries. And I would say most of my life has been out of Southeast Asia or Asia Pacific. I've worn many different hats in the software industry. Everywhere from being a hardcore developer initially to then more of an analyst job, to then being a consultant on site with clients. I've done taken on project management and program management roles, subject matter expertise roles in the fintech space, and ultimately was a product director looking after Asia Pacific for a specific product line, which covered about 200 people in total. And then in the middle of the pandemic, I decided to turn my life upside down. And I was joining a really good organization. We were doing a good job, but I wasn't feeling the passion and the drive anymore. And I wanted to go on a different path and just started following my dreams. Quit my job without a real plan, to be honest. My wife was just pregnant with her very first child. So it was a very, very risky move. But I thought, my life is too short to just hang around and cruise through life. I want to make a difference. And what's a better time than to make a difference when there's a pandemic, when there are a lot of organizations forced to change their behavior? Now is a good time to implement something new and affect change. Now we can skyrocket the ideas. I didn't have an idea yet. So what happened then is I got invited to an early stage VC program called Antler. And we basically, they select out of thousands of applicants, about 50 to 75 people. They make them co-founders, they start matchmaking. And then what happened was I found a very good co-founding team. We basically started working on an idea, which was more in the sports industry. So something about me as well. I'm really passionate about sports. I've been playing football my entire life. And then I got very passionate about triathlon or Ironmans. And we were solving a problem in the sports space. So it's a sports tech solution. We got funded. But after a couple of weeks, we returned the money because it wasn't the right co-founder fit for the problem. And we figured that out immediately after the funding. So luckily, so then we took that decision quickly. and I'll talk a little bit more about my views on startups and what really matters. And then I started working on this idea by myself. And as I was doing this sports tech idea, I was getting really good traction. I stumbled upon a much bigger problem. As I was starting to create my own technology team, because I was building the platform myself, and I wanted to outsource my services, I really felt I didn't have a lot of good options. So one is you could hire, and that's a very difficult proposition for a startup that has a very limited budget. Very hard to attract the right talent when you don't have any traction yet, and limited traction at that point. I dabbled in the freelancer space, so I tried the freelancer platforms, but that was really frustrating for me, and I can go into details later. And I tried outsourcing and evaluated outsourcing agencies, but that was such a hit and miss exercise. I didn't know who to trust. So I actually stumbled upon a much bigger problem then, and I said, hey, why don't I try solving this problem as well? And then I work on 2 startups in parallel, and then I have 2 horses in the race, and then I can basically select the one that's having the most traction. And as we started building Magtas, it had so much traction immediately. It became so undeniable that I put my sports tech idea and startup on ice. It's still gonna happen. It's still doing fantastic. It's still gonna be a fantastic thing, but this is just so much bigger. And so this has now become pretty much a proper business, and I can talk much more about that in a sec. But that's where I am today, and that's a quick intro to Wouter.
Awesome. Really excited to host someone who has did so many different roles, wear so many different hats. Gonna talk about your journey. So since you started so early, like you started since you were like a child, from 16, right? So want to know what are the advantages when you are starting early, because a lot of people these days also talk about disadvantage and how you are losing your childhood and things like that. So what is your opinion on starting early when you are a kid and getting into professionalism, how that changes your life?
Wow. Okay. So I started early, but I didn't miss out on a childhood, to be honest. So one thing, and I'm going to be frank here, I don't think I'll ever have a midlife crisis. I think I've done everything there is to do as a kid. There were no real boundaries in growing up. But so I how do I put it? I'm always doing a lot of things. So there are different sides to me personally. One is I'm a big fan of the beach. So I love nature, beach. I love the beach life. On the other hand, I'm very big into sports. So I was doing sports every day, and I was very ambitious. We became national champion of the Philippines 3 times, for instance. So really, we're very serious about that too. But then there was the fun, right? Going out with friends and partying and all that. I definitely didn't hold back there either. And then there was academics and challenging myself. And to be honest, I very early on in my life, I figured out it's all about balance, right? How do you do all the things you want to do and find a structure to your life where you can do all of that so you don't miss out? And then learn how to prioritize, right? So yeah, and I still apply that to my life today. So maybe back to your question, I learned very quickly how to balance, like, as I was running a business in my old life, in my old career. So I was looking after a company that had 200 people, or a business of 200 people. And at the same time, I was representing Belgium in the World Championships for the Ironman, right? And so somehow I found that balance. And then there's my wife, and now a baby, and now a startup again. So I guess it's not doing things early also allows you how to you can teach yourself how to balance things early on in life. That's what I got out of it anyway. And I'm the type that always wants to do stuff and always wants to challenge himself. So yeah, that's what I got out of it. I don't know if that was a good answer, but that's the best I could think of.
If it's your answer, it's a good answer. That's what I say. So I'm gonna talk about your sports journey.
Sure.
As you already said, three-time national champions. Already said the Ironman triathlon. You conquered the Ironman triathlon. So and represented Belgium, your country, in that. So it's a big thing. Gonna talk about how this interest came and how shifting from one sport to another sport, and the inspiration you took from sports, from life, and how important is it to be super active and being involved in some sort of physical activity, because I'm losing these a lot, and my wife is super angry on me that I'm not into much physical activity, I'm not getting much time. How important is it to dedicate time? uh,
Yeah, very, very good question, and very important to me, and probably my biggest frustration today. So don't feel bad, because I can relate to what you just said. So maybe a couple of things. So I've one thing, I started with football, or soccer, as they say in America,
yep.
very early, and that was my number one passion in life for probably 20 years in my life. That was all I dreamt about. My heroes were football players. Is what I watched. I represent. No, I watched the Belgian national football team very passionately, the clubs as well, and I played as part of a team. And you develop such a good skill set when you're part of a sports team early on, right? You work as a team. You have a common goal. You show up to practice every day, and you're just there for your teammates, right? And that translates so well to the real world. That's something that people overlook too much. I find a lot of people go deep into academics and forget the importance of team sports. And really, the what I feel probably the best education I've had in life is team sports. Like the ability to work with difficult characters, the ability to handle pressure when you're, I don't know, in the finals of a national championship, and something goes wrong, and you have to step up, and you have to cover each other on the pitch and all that. So that's extremely important. Now, then the second part is I switched to Ironmans and triathlon, mainly because the type of I was getting injured too much with football, which was a very frustrating thing for me. So I was getting to a certain level, which was good, and then I would hit injury again. It was basically my ankles. So when I went to triathlon, it's much more predictable. You don't pivot, and you don't have this explosive kind of movements. And what I also felt is it's a very honest sport. Unlike football, you can get away with talent. In triathlon, it's endurance. It's about how much you put into it. If you have a very structured way of working, you will get there. But you will never get there unless you put the time in. and that I learned a lot from that journey, because that's the exact mentality I apply to the business world. Like, it's always incremental, small steps. It's never a sprint. It's a long-term vision. It's a structure. Balance it with enough rest, and really incremental improvements over time. And what that also did to me was it balanced my life out really well, because I had that structure where I forced myself to go for that swim, for that bike, for that run on a very regular basis. I switched off, because when you're so deep into your day-to-day problems, you can get lost. You sometimes focus on the wrong things. You're focusing on a very specific problem. You go so deep, and sometimes it requires you to take a step back to realize it's not even a problem to begin with. Sometimes you're very frustrated about things, the petty little things, and when you go for a run and you come back, actually you look at it but with much better clarity. But what I also found is most of my best ideas actually come when I'm on my bike, when I'm running, or when I'm swimming, because I allow myself to remove me from the problem, and I take a step back and I connect dots that I don't usually see. So, long question, but I am now trapped a little bit. It's getting better now, but I was trapped for the last 5, 6 months on really just no sleep, getting this business off the ground. And when you don't have sleep, it's very hard to exercise. Now I am forcing myself to find time again to regularly exercise, and I'm so much more productive. The decisions I make are so much better. And just I'm in a much better mood when problems arise. All of these things matter. So yeah, very good question. Sorry for the long-winded answer, but yeah, it's a topic I'm
I
extremely passionate about.
Yeah, I'm really gonna take inspiration from you here because I used to do not at a competitive level, but I love running. I
Mhm.
love riding a bike. I love skating, and I love dancing. So all
Oh,
these sports or all this form of physical activity I used to love, but in this pandemic I'm just a couch potato and not moving much. So uh, really gonna take inspiration from there and gonna start moving a little bit more. uh, Wouter, now I'm
sure.
gonna talk about Magtas and gonna talk about the core philosophy of your team. And I remember it's all about trust, as you already said with me on a different call. So really want to dive into what kind of problems you are solving with the Magtas, and what is that your company is doing. Let's go towards the introduction of your company.
Sure. And let me maybe first summarize what we do very, very briefly,
Yeah,
right? So
sure.
basically, we are a marketplace for business to business outsourcing. That's what we do in essence, right? And a marketplace where buyers come and purchase services from suppliers. And we do anything and everything digital,
Yes.
ranging from software development to 3D animation and other types of arts, to digital marketing, to lead generation. It doesn't really matter. If I'm a startup or an SME or any type of business for that matter, I should focus on what I do best, and I should be able to outsource the rest, right? That's really how the world should function. However, that's not how the world functions today. It's not because people don't understand the value of outsourcing. It's because people struggle to outsource. They struggle to find the right partner to outsource to. They struggle to trust that relationship. They struggle to manage that relationship from a client perspective. From a supplier perspective or somebody, a service provider, they struggle to expose themselves globally. How can if I'm in a remote corner in the south of the Philippines or India or Sri Lanka or wherever in the world, how do I get discovered? Studies show that 70% of outsourcing services are found via Google.
Yep.
What that means, unless you have invested in your SEO, you will not be discovered, your search engine optimization. And there may be maybe agencies out there that are extremely good at the services that they provide, but they may not have the best marketing or sales teams in place and may not have the budgets, and hence will struggle to be discovered. Our platform is all about giving a platform to high quality, cost effective providers to now provide services to clients anywhere in the world, right? But on the other side of the coin, if I'm a client and I have to use Google to essentially find my provider, that's very tough. That's very unstructured. Why can I go to Amazon and basically purchase any product I want, compare them based on reviews, and have that delivered to my doorstep in a matter of days? Why does that work for goods? Why doesn't that work for business services? That's really the big gap in the market. It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and there's no real proper solution out there. So at a time where of a pandemic, where this is very topical, where businesses are forced to reinvent themselves, where work from home is much more accepted, where people have opened up to international collaboration and working together with remote teams, now is the right time to solve this problem. And we have a fantastic template to copy, which is the freelancer platforms, where they have solved a similar problem, but very much focused on contractor or freelancer requirements. We can copy the concept, but then apply it to a business outsourcing, which is a very, very different space. but clearly the world is ripe for this. So that's what we do in a nutshell.
Awesome. That is a really interesting answer. I'm gonna also dive and gonna talk about some of your clients. I'm gonna talk about the major work you guys have did with your platform and what kind of companies you connect. You already mentioned everything digital, but would love to know what is the kind of companies which you are currently dealing with.
Yeah, it's a very good question, and this is where this is why I love startup life, and we can dive into my philosophy on startup. So we had a very specific vision initially,
Yep.
which was, okay, let's start with a very specific problem and two very specific markets. So the problem we chose was software development, because people can relate to outsourcing software development. It is also a problem that every tech company has. And the two markets that we chose were Philippines. So I spent 10 years of my life in the Philippines. I've outsourced to the Philippines quite extensively throughout my career, but also many other countries. But 3 of my co-founders are also from the Philippines. So I have a very strong base there, and we can create a very good supply base from there. I'm currently based in Singapore. I've been here for 8 years now. We have a very strong network, and 2 of my co-founders live here. So we could then very quickly attack the Singapore market from a demand side of things, or from a client. So we decided software development, demand coming from Singapore, supply out of the Philippines. Very quickly, we got requirements for social media management, lead generation, 3D animation, and so much more, that we had to take a step back. And our clients were coming from the US, supply was coming from Sri Lanka, Albania, Philippines, India, and we were realizing, oh, hang on. Maybe we need to rethink this a little bit, and we revamped our strategy. So the way we position ourselves right now is, imagine you're a startup. We should be able to bring any startup on a journey with us. You come to us with a specific pain point, let's say, for instance, software development, or maybe landing page creation, or maybe even website creation. And from you have a good experience, you then come back to us with your next requirement, and next requirement, and you can then figure out what you should focus on and what you then can cost effectively outsource with quality. Now, having said that, so basically the holistic package for, let's say, a startup business is what we will provide, and what we already provide today. Now, the type of customers we have is, we find our sweet spot right now, at least, is any organization that doesn't have too much red tape. It's a marketplace for outsourcing services doesn't necessarily translate well to like a big organization where they spend months and months vetting their supplier before they actually get to their approved vendor list, right? That's an example of an organization we park for the future. But so basically, we're talking about the SME space in terms of demand, startup and SME space in terms of demand initially, but in terms of suppliers, the whole range. Because we have people that come to us for like, okay, I have a very limited budget, what can you do? And we have people that come to us and say, I have a big budget, it needs to be top quality. And we cover everything from A to Z.
So the biggest problem of startup, especially service-based startups, and is basically the unreachability or the unpredictability of demand side. Of course, they have business for next 3 months, but they don't know what they're gonna do for other 3 months. They are good with their jobs, but they are not good with marketing or sales. So these are the biggest challenge, and I am glad that you mentioned how SEO works, because SEO is really tricky. If I gonna search about AR/VR companies, I'm sure I'm not gonna get some good companies who are doing actual work. Rather, I'm gonna get a name of companies who have spent more on SEOs and they are just listed high, right? So, really want to know about how you are solving these pain points of startups and introducing them to demand side. So, what
Yeah.
is your team doing exactly?
Yeah, so I'm writing this down so I don't forget. So you touched very important questions. So one is demand consistency, right?
Yep, yep,
And the second part is how do we elevate despite of not investing in SEO, right? So first of all, demand. So the good thing about our business and what we step into is it's all long-term relationships. In the business to business space, the reason why businesses don't really jump on the freelancer platforms as much as they could is because it's not a long-term strategic relationship where you have a single point of contact that's going to delegate everything at their end, that's going to do quality control, and something you can invest in for the long run, something you have with an established team. It's a business comes to us to not make, they don't come to us for a $50 logo. They come to us and they're spending way more. So at this point, on average, our clients spend $10,000 a year, right?
yep.
That's why we're not competing with the freelancer platforms, because it are these type of relationships, and businesses don't want to invest in short-term relationships. It's all about the long-term benefits that they can build and the partnerships they can build. So if you've managed to build a trusted relationship with a client, as a supplier, you have a long-term business flow coming in, right? So that's what we facilitate. Now, as you do that, which brings me back to the second point, is as you do that, you build up credibility on the platform. New businesses or clients will come in and will see that other businesses with similar problems were very satisfied with these requirements. And we now have an independent third-party platform where you get reviews and you can build a reputation and you can show how good you are. And we basically level the playing field for all the suppliers out there, which you can't achieve via a Google search, right?
Not
So you
possible.
no
Yeah.
longer, you don't invest in SEO. You invest in satisfying your client, because that's good feedback then builds onto the next business and the next and the next. And that's what we're about. And that's what it should be about. And that's where, and we're not reinventing any wheels here. This has been applied for years in many other industries. It's just
You
not
are just
applied here.
optimizing and reconfiguring it.
Yeah, applying it to a different problem which is actually a massive problem. And we will be able to connect so many good and proven institutions or entities, providers to demand. And then maybe one more thing on demand, right? So we are an early stage startup. We are now, and I can talk about that more in a sec. We're now just over 6 months old. And we, at this stage, I would say 80-90% of our business is business that came to us. So we did not go out and aggressively say, come and come to us. The demand automatically came to us. It was almost a magnet. Okay, finally a platform like this. Then, as our CCO Nuno came on board, Chief Commercial Officer came on board, we said, okay, let's try out. Let's go to market hard for a week. And so we know, let me rephrase this. Let's go to market hard now, because let's start to really scale up quickly. And we had to stop after a week because the demand became so much that we couldn't provide the right supply. And we are still having a backlog of finding the right teams for the demand that's coming in. So that's the tricky part of a marketplace, right? You have the demand, you got the supply, you got the technology. It all needs to grow in tandem. You can't just focus on one thing and then on the other thing next. You need to somehow do one thing and then balance it out with the rest. So it's a very tricky business that we run. But I'm not worried about demand from anything and everything that I have seen. As long as we are able to get the right quality providers on our platform, the demand is undeniable.
Awesome. So the question I asked is technically the half questions, because the same problem exists on the demand side as well, right? Like SEO startups don't want to invest in SEO, although they should not have to invest in SEOs. Similarly, companies don't want to hire the big organization, or the person who wants to outsource the work does not want to hire a guy good with SEO. He wants to hire maybe a guy good with 3D design, and that SEO is misleading, and that confuses him, and that ends up losing his own money. So I guess your platform is doing a really great job there.
Yeah, and what is SEO, right? If you dig down to the bottom of it, search engine optimization. You basically reverse engineer Google.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, this is how I go up in the ranking based on Google. Let me now invest a lot of time and money into making that work and making my ranking go up. Is that what you should be putting your time in? Right? Unfortunately, it is, because 70% of business of outsourcing services are found there right now. Unfortunately, it is, but that's what we're here to change. You're right.
Yep. I totally agree with you on this. Gonna talk about your experiences. So since you have experiences in wearing multiple hats, you did so many different kind of jobs. You have perspective of a subject matter expert to a product manager. So I'm gonna talk about how you in your team itself, how you resolve these conflicts, because there are so many things which there are so many perspectives which are there, and from every person's like, if there is a subject matter expert is gonna see the same product in a very different way than a 3D designer or maybe a coder, right? So these conflicts are very common in any startup or even bigger companies or even any kind of team. If more than three people are working, these conflicts are there, and these conflicts are in all sort of kind, right? So what are your ways to resolve these kind of conflicts?
You touch upon a really good point. And let me write this down so I don't forget. So you started the question with SME and product management. And those are probably the two words that matter the most in my answer.
Yeah, yep.
So thanks for starting with that. So you're right. There is just software development in general, right? If you can solve a problem in 100 different ways, and it will depend on the context which one is right? One may be quick and dirty, but is exactly what your client wants. The other one will take you a year, but it's very, very scalable. Another one will take you 2 years, but has the absolute best UX. So the functional as well as the non-functional requirements, etc., matter. Now, there are two things that we focus on a lot within Magtas. One is structure. And this is really because we are a professional organization by professionals for professionals. The way that for instance, our work order process works is in itself very much aligned to an agile philosophy, right? Where we know from our experience that, if you come up with requirements for the next year and come up with a plan for the next year, on day 2, you can throw that plan in the garbage bin, right? That's not how software or anything should be done. You should always have an agile methodology. So the way we structure our work orders aligns to best practices already. We also incorporate a request for proposal process where you can then compare different suppliers, apples to apples, right? And you have an opportunity to build trust and really spend some time with the different agencies before you make a decision. Then there's this change request process. Then there's our advisory on how to draft requirements for your specific problem. Many people want to do something but have no clue on how to even start. Now, so that's more around methodology, product management, articulating requirements, executing on projects. We even have a dispute resolution team in place, so that's part of the package. If anything goes wrong, we are there to help facilitate that process, like an insurance package for both parties, etc., etc. But that's structure. When I talk about subject matter expertise, and this is what I'm really proud about. So we are 6 co-founders, but we all have a very strong experience as clients as well as providers in a specific field. So me personally, it will be software development. Osmond, infrastructure. Anthony, accounting and legal. Jackie, digital marketing. Nuno, very experienced in lead generation. Nilo, very experienced in SEO and a different side of software development. So we know what the clients are looking for. So when somebody comes to us, it's not a generic template, right? When somebody comes to us with a requirement, we not only can help our clients articulate and be successful, hence from a structure perspective, we also know how to match. We know what they're looking for exactly. We see the big picture. We understand the real problem they're solving, and we know how to solve the problem. So the combination of product management and structure with SME is the solution exactly to the problem you state.
Absolutely. Yep. So it's wonderful answer. I'm also gonna
Thanks.
talk about need your vision on most of such problems of conflicts between the team who's outsourcing and the team who's providing service is also comes from undefined or not well defined documentation of the task, right? So I'm gonna ask you about so do you also recommend these people who want to outsource their work that what could be the better definition of their work, right? So
Yes,
for example, they don't sometimes the clients do not have even a clear picture about what they exactly want, and they are not able to actually estimate the efforts required, right? So there is a conflict, right? So need to
Correct.
know about your vision in this subject.
And this is where I apply an agile methodology,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We don't think tasks. We encourage our clients to never think in terms of task when it comes to requirements. It's about deliverables. It's about output. What is the end state, right? The underlying tasks, leave that to the supplier. That's none of your concern. The distribution of the task, no. Think about sign-off criteria. Think about, okay, you want anything and everything, but what's your MVP, your minimum viable product? And with it, what's your primary use case? Why don't we make that primary use case work first, right? And describe that properly. What are your non-functional requirements? Have you even thought of that? It must look good. It's not a requirement, right? How about scalability? Are you going to have 10 users, 1,000, 100 million users? That has a very, very big impact on how you define your requirements. So yes, we do. Now, having said that, some people come to us with a brief where they say in a couple of sentences what they want to do, and then we help fine-tune that for them, and then obviously also together with the suppliers, because quite often you think you know what you want, you talk to 5 suppliers, and then you say, oh, hang on, maybe I need to fine-tune my requirements, etc., etc. Some people know exactly what they want, right? So obviously where it's not needed, we just facilitate the process and make it efficient. So yeah, that's my answer.
I guess, yeah, that totally makes sense. Gonna talk to you about Singapore. So, how your company is growing in Singapore, and how you decided to go in Singapore and start. You are from Belgium, so how this transaction happened, and some numbers on the demand side of Singapore.
Yeah, very exciting stuff there. You're asking the right questions, and just for your audience, we didn't talk about these questions up front, right? So
Right.
it's not scripted or anything. Okay, Singapore. So as I started my career, I was immediately assigned to Southeast Asia. And flew into Southeast Asia, and I did some work in the Philippines. I then moved to Indonesia, moved to Thailand, did some work in Malaysia, had a stint for 3 years in Hong Kong, and then I had this fantastic opportunity in Singapore. And this is where I just fell in love with the city. I just love everything about Singapore. This is not just great for a balanced lifestyle and East meets West kind of perfect mix, in my opinion. It's safe, it's great to raise a family, and in my opinion, it's the future for business. This is where massive growth will come in the medium term and especially in the long term. It's very conducive for startups, and it's a place where a lot of business is moving to. It used to be Singapore and Hong Kong, but with the latest trouble in Hong Kong, I love Hong Kong dearly, but we have seen a lot of influx from Hong Kong to Singapore, and this has become a very central, important point. So I stayed here initially because I just loved it so much. But then also now as a startup, we're finding it's just a very good place to build relationships. And most importantly, what I'm most excited about is strategic partnerships. It's where a lot of strategic decisions are made. It's where we can go and have a coffee, dinner, a beer with strategic partners and come up with a fantastic collaboration model. So to give you an example, as part of that 1 week outreach that we did, I'm not going to name names just now because we can't make it official. We talked to companies and top universities in the world who are embedded in the startup ecosystem. They told us that they would love nothing more than a platform like ours that gives them, quote unquote, a menu of starter packages for all of their early stage or aspiring startups, where they can come in and say, here are the different problems I want to solve. They give stipends anyway to the different startups. Most of them get like $1,000, some get 5,000, 10,000, and then they don't really know where to go and know how to optimize what they do best and outsource the rest, right? This is that platform. This is where they have a predefined set of options, especially catered for instance, Singapore tech startups. And those are the kind of partnerships that excite me the most, because that's one strong relationship that would scale massively. And we're replicating this all over the world, right? But Singapore is a good, because you asked specifically Singapore, this is a good example of demand, right? And people come to us all the time. Like I say, we put the reach out on hold. People come to us proactively all the time, startups saying, hey, I have this need. I trust that you do your vetting properly, and I know you can find me something cost effective. Can you please help me? So yeah, no shortage of demand, that's for sure.
Awesome. So yeah, I guess it's a very honest answer. I'm going to talk about it's going to be one of the most important question for the listeners, because most of the listeners are from XR community. So want to know what kind of work or what kind of services you are supporting right now within XR space, in virtual reality, in augmented reality, 3D modeling, design. So yeah.
So and this is how we met, Avir, right?
Exactly.
So when our business was still small, and I would say probably one of our first 10 or 20 customers that came in was immediately a VR requirement, right? And it was not something we wanted to step in immediately. This has now expanded into 3D modeling. So we have a very strong connection, somebody we know well in the Philippines that is very good at 3D animation and modeling, that has now come into that picture. So a very good example of somebody that comes to us and then we just find the supply for that need. Now, I'm by no means a VR expert. I've obviously played VR games, right? I'm fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by where it's heading. I'm sure you know better than me what Facebook just announced. The one thing that excites me the most is immersive environments. And I feel that that's what I'm looking at very closely right now. And something that's very important to us and to me very, very specifically is trust. We are forging and creating, facilitating partnerships. And partnerships are primarily based on trust. So, but what we also are is we are a marketplace which scales up and has to scale up. So it's not only trust in us and in our opinion, it's also trusting the suppliers. It's also the suppliers. We have also seen some suppliers saying no to the clients, simply because they don't trust the client. They feel like this client is going to be way too difficult to deal with. It's not, et cetera, et cetera. So both ways, right? So one of the main problems that I'm looking at it now is how do I scale trust? And your question is very exciting because we are, I don't know if I should mention the name just yet. No, I'm not going to do it yet. We are discussing a potential partnership with an immersive environment tech company. And they have initially focused on a slightly different model, which is where people work together remotely, but still create an office environment. And initially I was quite skeptical. You create your little avatar and you walk around and blah, blah, blah. But then I did it. And within 2 seconds, it was so weird. The graphics were so basic. My mind changed. It was as if I was there, even though it was totally not a realistic image, right? But it was just me walking around, and I was there with somebody from Belgium and somebody from the Philippines, and it was just a proof of concept. And we're like, whoa, this is weird, because we could just all log into this environment, and all of a sudden we are mimicking the feel we get as if when we're working remotely. And then I ask myself the question, can we translate this to our problem, which is business to business outsourcing, where trust is so essential, where a demand in Singapore talks to a supply in India, a demand in the US to a supply in the Philippines, and they don't see each other. How can we, beyond just Zoom meetings or whatever meeting, maybe it's more than just scheduling meetings and talking to each other and questioning. Maybe it's even more than video messaging. Maybe we need to consider an environment, an expo-like environment, where you come in and you just talk to people as if you're there. And maybe that will take this thing to a level where clients can make decisions quickly, where trust is built quickly, where they can even have periodic meetings to discuss sprint findings and sprint output and reviews together and go into that environment. Will that help trust building? I don't know the answer, but the beauty about being a tech startup is we don't have to get 100 approvals to experiment with it. We already are halfway our proof of concept, right? and maybe it's not the right time for it, but I'm definitely going to experiment with this. So one, there's supply and demand in the VR space, but even us, Magtas, a marketplace for B2B outsourcing, we think that VR could potentially play, or immersive environments especially, could play a very important role in the near-term future.
Thanks for mentioning virtual workspaces, because there's a concept that when you play together, you make much more stronger bonds, and there's no one better than you to understand this, right? So there's an incident that I have played like pool games and bowling games in virtual reality with clients who are sitting in US or clients who are sitting in Australia sometimes. So it's really amazing to see that we make much more stronger trust within virtual reality, playing and sharing the same co-working space. And it's amazing. So I guess these platforms are really bringing the future in front of us.
And let me add one thing to this. So company culture is so important to me personally, because I feel when you have a good culture, good leadership, you automatically attract the right people.
Yes.
Most people don't come for money. Most people want to be part of a movement. They want to enjoy the work they do. They want to be inspired. And it's usually, I think, number 6 on the list or something. Money is more about, yes, of course, needs to pay the bills, but ultimately it's about how well respected and rewarded you feel. So anyway, back to my point. We started incorporating Remo. So basically a platform where we're every week or every couple of weeks, we do a remote coffee session, because many of us, we're now 20 people in the company, have not even met each other in person yet. This whole company started in the middle of the pandemic. Most of us have been in lockdown this entire time, right? We have not met face to face with many of the people. And we invest in a platform. It's remarkable how people are initially skeptical, right? And they come in and say, oh, what is this again? This looks so childish. They come in, and all of a sudden, you are in different tables, it's as if you are literally physically on different tables. And it's so strange how a little bit of an augmentation of the normal group meetings and the normal face-to-face cameras, just a twist on it and a bit of VR applied to it, really makes a big difference to how people feel and how people bond, like you say.
Amazing. Kindly gonna ask you about rapid prototyping approach. So you prefer the rapid prototyping, and wanna know the advantages of it, and why you choose over building the prototype first, then building the entire structure. Go for the final product first. So really wanna know about this.
And very applicable to any industry, right, including XR.
So
So rapid prototyping, in my opinion, goes way beyond even an initial proof of concept. It's actually a mindset of any startup. Any startup should have throughout not only the first couple of months, but actually for many months, until you have that perfect product market fit. And then you go and say, okay, now we build this fantastic engineering team with all bells and whistles, right? And let me just start off. Like, so the vision that I and my co-founders had on day one, if we spent the last 6 months building that product that fit that vision perfectly, with all bells and whistles, fully optimized, and started business now, we would have had the wrong product. Hands down. Everything would have been wrong about it. It would have been a good start, but would have been wrong. So the approach we instead chose was, hey, we had a drink together at a bar, and we were brainstorming about this on, I believe it was a Tuesday, and on the next Wednesday, we started getting our own hands dirty and starting building away. Within 10 days, I kid you not, we had 5 suppliers signed up on something we stitched together and on a website with a fully built profile. Of course it was crap. Of course it was, I mean, yes, it worked on a phone, but it was not optimized for that at all. Of course. But that was not the point. The point was, are we capable of getting suppliers to sign up with us? That was the whole point. 1, yes. So basically that part of the business model was very quickly verified. 2, do I have the right team in place that is capable of inviting the right teams to sign up? Check. We found this out in 10 days. Next up, we went to the clients. Within 3 weeks of prototyping, we had our very first $2,000 deal signed, right? Of course, a lot of was pseudo automated, pseudo manual, but we validated so much, and it is very uncomfortable. Like, a lot of people that don't understand tech startups and are only see finished products ever in their life struggle with this, because you need to be able to expose such an unfinished product to the world. But if you present a finished product early on, you went way too slow. That's not what startup is about. Rapid prototyping is about very quickly validating your business idea, getting traction, learning from everything, every step of the way. Every week I ask myself, what am I validating this week? What part of our business is still unvalidated? Let's test that out immediately via technology, via people. And very quickly you'll see patterns will start to form. You'll see what your clients really want. You'll see the gaps in your co-founding team. We were a co-founding team of 3. We're now a co-founding team of 6. And all the gaps that popped up throughout the last 6 months were filled. We have very complementary skill sets. We have very complementary focuses and backgrounds. That's specifically to solve this problem. So going back to my problem, if I went the traditional quote unquote waterfall approach of this is what I want, these are my requirements, this is my analysis, this is everything, by today we would have probably had a very, very beautiful product, but it would have had 0 users Zero money earned on the platform or spent on the platform, zero traction, and nothing validated. So even up to today, 6 months in, rapid prototyping is core to what we do. It will be core to what we do forever. There are 10 experiments ongoing with third-party applications that we want to somehow integrate. We think these are exciting things, but maybe it will be an absolute waste of time. Same with this whole immersive environment. Maybe the world is not ready for that yet. So rapid prototyping is uncomfortable. And I think the hardest part is creating a culture within the company where rapid prototyping is embraced, where perfection is not what we're striving, where validation is what you strive, where you're happy to present an imperfect product to the market because you know you'll learn so much from it. So yeah, long answer. But here you see why rapid prototyping worked for us and continues to work for us, and why I'm such a big advocate. And also, another thing is, I know people that spent half a year debating their tech platform to use to build everything. We went no code because that got us to the solution the quickest. And it's actually showing to be fit for purpose. It's actually showing to be scalable. Will this be what we use in a year? I don't know. We'll see. I actually don't care. It's about what do we need at that point of time, and what's the data that backs those decisions.
Awesome. So I guess it's a perfect answer for rapid prototyping explanation. Gonna talk to you about what are the things you miss about Belgium. So since you grew up in Belgium, and I'm sure you must be missing a lot of things about the country. So yeah, I would love to know.
So I didn't really grow up in Belgium. I only spent 3 years of my life there. So it's very funny because I'll go back to what I miss about Belgium in a sec. I spent definitely most of my life in the Philippines, so over 10 years. And if I would call one country home, although I live in Singapore, it would still be Philippines. Those were my formative years. That's where my friends were. That's where most of my childhood was. So I would probably associate myself closest with Philippines. So that would be home to me. And I miss that every single day. The culture, the mindset, the way of life. But many of my co-founders are from the Philippines. So it still feels a little bit like home. Now, going back to Belgium, obviously that's the other side of me. And what is really funny is I feel like a Filipino sometimes, but everybody looks at me as a foreigner. And sometimes in Belgium, I feel like a foreigner, but everybody looks at me as a local, which is really, really funny. No, but I have a lot of family in the Philippines, in Belgium. So some of my grandparents have now passed away, and I missed a lot of them in the last decades. My mom lives there. My aunts, uncles, cousins, who would love to spend more time with, are there. But I also miss Philippines. I miss a lot of things. So when borders open, I can't wait to pay everyone a visit. Now, I love Belgian beers. I love Belgian chocolates. I love Belgium in the summer, especially. That's when everybody lets loose and everything is relaxed. I love the festivals. But I don't love Belgian winters. So that's not something I look forward to.
Harsh winters. So I'm gonna give you a challenge, okay, this time.
Sure,
so,
please.
In India, the biggest thing which everybody relates to is Bollywood. All right. So I'm gonna give you a Bollywood movie dialogue and gonna see how you're gonna perform in that. Right?
Oh my God.
Since you already talked about so much traveling to multiple countries, the dialogue I'm gonna give to you is Ja Simran Ja, Ji Le Apni Zindagi. It means go ahead and live your life to the fullest. Right? So I'm gonna repeat your dialogue and listen carefully. Ja Simran Ja.
Okay.
Ja Simran Ja. Ji Le.
Ja Simran Ja.
जी ले
जी ले
अपनी जिंदगी.
अपनी जिंदगी.
All right.
Let me give this a go. Okay.
Yeah.
Ja
Yeah.
simbri ja. And what's the other? So I can't even read my own handwriting. I should have become a doctor.
Yeah.
Ja simbri ja. And then?
जी ले अपनी जिंदगी.
जी ले अपनी जिंदगी. Okay, let me give this a go. Ja simbri ja. जी ले अपनी जिंदगी.
Wow.
Let me try one more time. Ja simbri ja. जी ले अपनी जिंदगी.
Yeah. जा सिमरन जा जी ले अपनी जिंदगी. Awesome.
That's that's very closely aligned to my motto, my way of life, my friend.
Yeah. So
Thanks for
whenever
making me say that.
somebody is feeling like disturbed and he wants to do something and he wants your opinion that should I go and do that, tell them Ja Simran Ja Ji Le Apni Zindagi.
Definitely. Maybe I'll print it out and have it in writing.
Yeah.
It will be a good conversation piece.
That would be awesome. So I really enjoyed this conversation and hosting you. And I really enjoyed and really learned a lot of good things about management, good things about demand side perspective, good things you are building about XR space, and you're doing a really good stuff solving problems for startups and demand side as well. So it's really an honor to host you on the show. And yeah, it's amazing.
It was my pleasure to be here, Avi. I really enjoyed it. I think we should do this again.
For sure.
And maybe there are many more topics we could be talking about, but really love the questions you asked and the way you asked them. And yeah, I'm sure this podcast is only going to go bigger and bigger.
Thank you so much. And it's really an honor to host you. And we'll see you next week, guys, with another podcast. So thank you, Walter. Yeah, Magtas. Awesome. Thank you,
Take
Team
care.
Magtas.
It was an honor to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much.